Hello, in today's video we're going to talk about the efficiency of the markets. I'm going to follow the first half of chapter 7 in Taylor and Virapana, so please follow up with the reading once you watch the video. And so two things that I want to talk about today. First of all, I want to do a quick recap of marginal analysis, the method that we used in the last couple of weeks, even without naming it this way, and then I'm going to talk about why competitive markets are efficient. And so let's begin with marginal analysis. We've been dealing with questions like, should a particular action be taken earlier in this course by looking at situations when consumers had to decide how much to consume, how much of a product to purchase, and producers had to decide how much to produce. And the general idea of marginal analysis is that when you have to decide whether you should take a particular action, you need to look at how much additional benefit it will generate you and how much additional cost you will incur. So you have to be comparing marginal benefit versus marginal costs, and marginal is just another way of saying additional. And you should take an action if its marginal benefit is at least as high as its marginal cost. So let's go back to the examples that we were working on previously. First of all, let's think about consumer decisions. And the question here is, how many units should the consumer buy, say, when the price is equal to $5? And here I'm giving you the schedule of the consumer's marginal benefits, and you can see that the usual assumption, because we believe that marginal utility of consumption is decreasing, so should be the marginal benefit of consumption. So the first unit that the consumer buys is the most valuable, the second is still valuable but not as much, the third and the fourth are also valuable, but the value of the additional value of each unit is decreasing the more and more units you buy. So we have the table of marginal benefits, and they are decreasing. Marginal costs, on the other hand, are fixed and equal to the market price of $5. So no matter how many units you want to buy, you have to pay market price. So when a consumer decides how many units to purchase, we can break that decision up into several steps. And the first step being, should the consumer buy the first unit? Should the first unit be purchased? And to answer that question, we need to compare the marginal benefit of that first unit, that is $10, to its marginal cost, 5. Since the benefit exceeds the cost, the answer is yes. That first unit should be purchased, and that unit will generate what we call consumer surplus. That is the difference between marginal benefit and marginal cost. And that's going to be consumer surplus of $5. So think about the consumer surplus as the net benefit from consumption to a consumer. Let's color the first unit green to make sure that the answer is yes for the first unit, and let's move on to the second unit. Should the second unit be purchased? And when the consumer has to decide whether to purchase the second unit, he or she has to compare the marginal benefit of that second unit, which is now lower, it's fixed at the level of 7, to the cost of 5. Since the benefit is still higher than the cost, the second unit should be purchased as well and will also generate some benefit. So the answer is yes, marginal benefit is 7, marginal cost is 5. The difference between the benefit and the cost is 2, so the second unit will generate additional $2 in consumer surplus. Let's color it green as well. What about the third unit now? Should the third unit be purchased? Its marginal benefit is only 4, whereas the cost is 5. So by buying the third unit, you will actually lose value rather than add value to your consumption, because you'll be paying $5 for something that you don't value as much as $5. You value it for less. So the answer here, no, you shouldn't buy the third unit because its marginal benefit is way too small relative to its cost. You should stop at 2. And so the answer to the original question, how many units should the consumer buy, is 2. Buying 2 units will generate a total consumer surplus of $7 for this consumer. Let's do the similar, let's ask a similar kind of question for producers. Suppose that the firm is facing the same market price at 5, so no matter how much it produces, it can only sell its output at 5. And here in this table, I'm listing you marginal cost of production, that is the additional cost that the firm incurs if it wants to increase its output. And the usual assumption for marginal costs is that they are increasing. So the first unit will cost $3 additional to produce, the second unit $4 on top of that, the third 5, and the fourth 7. What about the marginal benefit for the firm? Well, the marginal benefit for the firm is exactly the price at which it's able to sell its output. So the marginal benefit for the firm is going to be constant. So the situation for the firm is flipped relative to the situation of the consumer. For the consumer, marginal benefit is decreasing and marginal cost is fixed. For the firm, marginal benefit is fixed, marginal cost is increasing. But if we want to answer the question of how many units the firm should produce, we have to do exactly the same kind of step-by-step analysis where we're going to first look at the first unit and say, should the firm produce the first unit? And to answer that question, compare the cost to the price that it's going to get. It's going to earn $5, it's going to spend $3, so it's going to generate $2 of what we call the producer surplus, and so the answer is yes, the first unit should be produced. Similarly, what about the second unit? Should the second unit be produced? And the answer again is yes, because its benefit is 5, its cost is 4, so it's going to generate $1 of producer surplus. So yes, it makes perfect sense to do so. What about the third unit? This is the borderline case where the marginal benefit and marginal cost are the same, and so technically the firm should be indifferent between producing and not producing, but the usual answer is yes, the third unit should be produced as well, because marginal cost always incorporates the opportunity cost of production. So it is going to generate 0 in terms of producer surplus, 0 in terms of economic profit, but the accounting profit can still be positive. So if on paper you're making profit, why not do that? So I'm going to go on and say the answer is going to be yes for unit number 3. And if you look at marginal benefit and marginal cost of unit number 4, you would see that the answer should be no for the fourth unit. So to sum things up, if marginal benefit and marginal cost are exactly the same, technically the firm is indifferent, or a consumer who faces the same kind of scenario would be indifferent between buying and not buying this last unit. But we tend to say, let's buy it because these numbers reflect economic and not accounting profits. And so accounting profits will still be positive even if producer surplus is 0. The last unit, definitely not. So the answer here is 3 units should be produced. And again, we reach that answer by using the marginal analysis, by asking about the first unit first, then about the second, and then about the third. So we're looking at things incrementally. What is the additional benefit from the first unit, additional benefit from the second unit, additional benefit from the third unit? Go on and produce as long as you're generating benefit from each unit that you're producing. And the sum of those benefits is going to be the producer surplus of the firm. And in this case, it's $2 plus 1 plus 0, so $3 of surplus, $3 of net benefits generated by production in this scenario. Next thing that I'd like to do is I would like to go on and combine these kind of decisions when we're looking at a market as a whole. And so I'm going to alter the example slightly, but I'm going to stick to the price of $5, the price that we looked at when figuring out how much a consumer should buy and how much a firm should produce. And suppose that in this market there will be 3 buyers and 3 sellers, and the buyers would be as follows. The first buyer, buyer A, will buy 5 units, buyer B will buy 3 units, and buyer C will buy nothing. And then there's going to be 3 sellers. Okay, so for the total market quantity of 8, and there's going to be 3 sellers. Firm 1 will sell 2 units, firm 2 will sell 6 units, and firm 3 will sell no units at all for the same total of 8 units. So the question is, uh, in a competitive setting, in a competitive market, everybody's facing the same price. Each buyer and each seller has to decide how much to buy and how much to sell versus the market price. In our case, um, market price of $5. What can we say about the marginal benefits and marginal costs of buyers and firms? Well, first of all, for buyer A, if the buyer buys 5 units, that means that the fifth unit, the last unit that the buyer purchases, uh, generates a marginal benefit of 5 or more, and the sixth generates benefit of less than 5. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write it down as an equality. I'm going to say that marginal benefit of the fifth unit for buyer A is $5, but you can always remember that in the discrete world, it could be 5 or more. For buyer B, if the buyer purchases 3 units, the third unit's marginal benefit has to be very close to 5 as well, 5 or slightly higher. If buyer C decides not to buy anything at the price of $5, that means that the first unit that they can potentially buy, they value at something less than 5. So by looking at who buys how much at the market price, we can safely say what their benefits are for the last unit that they purchase. On the seller side, we can say the same thing about marginal costs. If the firm number 1 sells only 2 units, that means that the third unit is too expensive to produce at the market price. So that means that the marginal cost of the second unit is 5 or slightly lower, whereas the marginal cost of the third unit is definitely higher than 5. For firm 2, selling 6 units, marginal cost of the sixth unit has to be 5 or under marginal cost of the seventh unit above 5. For the firm selling no units, that means that its marginal cost of producing the first unit is above 5. So then how can we summarize what we see? We can say that for all market participants, all active market participants, marginal benefit of consumption from the last unit equals marginal price equals marginal cost of producing that last unit. So remember that supply curves, the red curve here, summarizes the marginal cost of individual producers. The demand curve summarizes the marginal benefits of individual consumers in this market. And so the meeting point, the intersection of demand and supply, which we determined would be the equilibrium prediction in that model, is where the marginal benefit of consumption of the last unit meets the marginal cost of the production of the last unit. So when we talk about market efficiency, and I apologize, I'm going to jump back here. The real question that we're asking is there a way to improve someone's well-being without hurting anyone? So we're basically, we want to look at the allocation of goods that this market produces. And in our situation, 8 units are produced by 2 out of the 3 firms and consumed by 2 out of the 3 buyers. And the question is, can we somehow improve somebody's well-being without hurting anyone? And so here are the ways I can approach this question. You can think about things as follows. Might it be better to produce less than 8 units? And the answer would be no, because the 8th unit is valued by at least $5 by the whoever's purchasing that 8th unit, and costs at most $5 by the firm that produces that 8th unit in the market. So 8th unit generates net benefits, gains to trade to buyers and sellers in this market, and so it should be produced. So producing less than 8 would decrease the benefits generated by trade in this market, and so it would hurt somebody. So it wouldn't be an improvement. Would producing the 9th unit be an improvement? And the answer again is no, because for the 9 unit, no buyer is willing to pay more than $5, and no seller would be willing to accept a price below $5. So the cost of production, which is going to sit on the supply curve, the red curve, for the next unit in this market would exceed the price that the buyers would be willing to pay. So again, it will reduce net benefit generated in this market, because if we force the ninth unit to be produced, the firms will have to pay for it more than they would be able to get from the buyers for it. So no reason to produce less, no reason to produce more. Finally, can we somehow reallocate units and make people happier? Not really. If we take units away from the buyers who are buying a lot and give some to the buyer who is not buying much, the buyers who we take the units away from will be hurt because we take benefits from them. But more importantly, when we do that, we take away more marginal benefit from the buyer who we hurt than we give marginal benefit to the buyer who benefits from it. If they weren't buying at 5 to begin with, their marginal benefit of the first unit is less than 5. So reallocating goods that are already produced from consumers who consume a lot to consumers who don't consume much reduces value. And similarly with the firms, the production here is efficient in the sense that the output is produced the cheapest way possible. If we let firm 3 produce, its production costs are the highest. So it really shouldn't produce unless there is high demand for the product and they can jump in and produce at the marginal cost of the first unit, which is above 5. At $5, it is too costly for them relative to other firms to be producing, so they shouldn't be producing. And so in this situation, you've seen the answer already. It would be no. No way to improve the market participants' well-being without hurting anyone. And this is what economists mean when they say that markets are efficient. Simply saying that means that the net benefits in this particular market for the market participants are maximized when the market is in the competitive equilibrium. And that's about it. We're not saying anything about whether it's fair that one buyer gets 5 units and the other buyer gets nothing, whether one firm is able to sell 2 and the other firm sells nothing. We're not looking at what is the reason that buyer C doesn't buy anything at all. It's just that we're looking at the market outcome, and we can say that there is no way to somehow readjust things, readjust consumption or production, produce more or less, and improve somebody's well-being without hurting anyone. That's all. Thank you very much.